we have acknowledged, the United States, that sometimes we use remotely piloted aircraft to conduct targeted strikes against specific al-Qaeda terrorists in order to prevent attacks on the United States and to save American lives. We conduct those strikes because they are necessary to mitigate ongoing actual threats, to stop plots, prevent future attacks, and again, save American lives. These strikes are legal, they are ethical, and they are wise.
Now, if you closed your eyes and you thought you were listening to, let's say, Ari Fleischer instead of Jay Carney there, you might have thought we were playing a tape here from the Bush years, talking about wiretapping, waterboarding, or indefinite detentions. The question is, some will say, oh, this is very different, but is it really here? Again, it comes down to, at a time of war, what powers are you comfortable to afford, not just the government, but specifically the executive branch and the president to decide where the line starts and stops. And joining us now to sound off on this, Tom Doherty, former advisor to Governor Pataki, and now a partner with Mercury Public Strategies. Dominic Carter, of course, political journalist and author. Chris Shays, former Republican congressman from Connecticut, who was in Congress when drone strikes began back in '03, and Andrew, who you've already met. Okay. Let me take you back to when they first started, when they were proposed. Would you have imagined...
This is a wow.
Okay.
I mean, it's a wow. American citizens have always had special rights. And I have argued to my constituents that we didn't suspend it for American citizens. And to think that somebody can target an American citizen overseas, to me, is amazing. For death.
Do you have a problem with the program in place?
No, not at all. I mean, in fact, that the 2 American citizens that have already been struck were terrorists, Khan and al-Qawi. I have no problem at all. That's why we elect governor officials. I trust this president. The only thing I will say, and the Congress and I were talking backstage about this, is the hypocrisy of this. Is that if this was George Bush...
Oh, I'll get into it. Trust me. I'll get into it.
But I have no problem with this whatsoever.
I'll get into what I think is a legitimate point about that depending on who the president is, there's a different reaction to this. Right. But, Dominic, at the end of the day, there's the legal issues that obviously, just because it's a white paper document from the White House doesn't mean it's legal. Then there's the ethical questions. And Tom mentioned one terrorist that was killed. Now, his son, in a separate incident, was killed as well, and his son was all of, I think, between 16 and 17 years of age. And the grandfather and the father of the terrorist has sued. He's like, I'm not looking for a penny. I'm not looking for any kind of compensation. I just want to know, where was the rule of law? Because my grandson was born. He goes, my son, he was radical. But my grandson went merely back to Yemen to find out about his dad. And he's not even 17 years old, and he's dead now, and I want to know how that happened. He's an American citizen. Legitimate question.
Legitimate question, but unconventional times require unconventional methods. The bottom line, if you're engaging, and I know who's the judge and jury, but if you're engaging in terrorist acts against this country, it is what it is. I mean, and Andrew mentioned this, I believe, in his setup piece. Remember, you have to be deemed that they can't arrest you. U.S. officials, that's a large hurdle. I know it doesn't excuse death, but if they can't arrest you, that's part one.
But Dominic, my point isn't that I'm squeamish about. My question is something different. And we've all read contracts before. This is the most open-ended language document I've ever read.
It was written intentionally that way.
My point is, somebody looks from above through a satellite, and they see a house, a safe house or whatever, that bad guys have gone in and out of. They're going to make a determination from thousands of miles away to say, we got to act now. And we're not sure who's in the house and who isn't, but we're going to take the intelligence available to us, and we're going to make an actionable decision. They don't have to answer to anybody.
And we're going to claim,
and these guys in Congress don't even have to know about it unless they choose to disclose it.
And they're going to claim it's an imminent threat.
And that's,
I mean, an imminent threat to me is a guy carrying the bomb into a building. That's an imminent threat. I mean, they know who they're looking for. The bottom line, I think this is going to hurt a good program. I defended this program when I was in Congress because I said, it's not American citizens. I mean, this is news to me, having been in Congress 21 years, that we were suspending the rights of Americans. I said,
and where does it stop is the question.
And let me just make the point. this is going to continue for the next 20, 30 years, the threat of terrorism. So we are going to allow this power to exist indefinitely and potentially grow.
But what's the answer? If you can't arrest them, if you can't locate them on foreign soil, what's the answer?
Well, let's
you just
think-
let them continue with terrorist activities?
No, let's say, well, what is their terrorist activities there as opposed to here? We're not talking the United States. So we don't go into their house. We know who they are. We keep tracking them until a point in time when we can deal with it.
Yeah, but if they're over in Yemen or wherever they are and they're having meetings planning an attack on Americans, I mean, they don't have to be standing there with a gun in their hand. They could just be going over plans.
Is that an imminent threat?
I consider that certainly an imminent threat.
I do as well.
That to me is an imminent threat. I mean, at
You
some point you got to
guys
start
are
the
so
process
radical.
of planning. I mean,
Well,
you're
let me
planning
speak
your
to
death
that point,
right
Andrew,
now.
because I meant it before. If you closed your eyes and it was Fleischer or somebody else talking about, well, we got to have Gitmo here because basically trust us. We're doing the right thing. We'll suspend due process here because that's what we have to do. Or we're going to use enhanced interrogation, waterboarding here because we deem it in the best interest of the United States in fighting in the war on terror. The howls and the screams, I think, justified went out there. Why is this any different or any better if the president's deciding, a Democratic president, who lives and who dies without, again, due process?
Well, I think the comparison to waterboarding is a difficult one, only because waterboarding has shown that it can be inconclusive if not providing bad information. You can actually get the answer you're looking for.
Can't
when
be undead if you were in that house by accident.
I understand that. But there are enough similarities to other parts of conventional warfare throughout all this that I think makes this more okay than not. If you see somebody, an American, who's on the enemy camp or in the enemy camp, you could make a pretty strong case that that person has become a traitor and is working against American
Well, let me ask
interests.
that.
And so they're a
the
viable
best example,
target.
the clearest one for the audience is if an American citizen puts on a Nazi uniform and fights against American troops, are they still American citizens?
They're
Or now enemies of the state?
They're enemies of the state at that
And
point.
should be treated like any other enemy, and their American citizenship no longer is withstanding.
You know, we haven't declared war, so I want to make that point. This is a power that the president and his team are using that goes well beyond what I would have even thought George Bush would have allowed.
But Congressman, I keep hearing you mention President Bush, but what happened with weapons of mass destruction? It's the same thing. President Bush took an entire country to war on a false premise. So what's the difference?
Aren't you making his point
Yeah.
that if you give unchecked power to people,
Well, I
that
guess you
basically
could
say,
look at
"Trust
it that
me,"
way. I guess you
then
could.
this one, what happens if they get it wrong and an American citizen's dead and they never even ran it by anybody to say, trust us, we're going to pick the right
See,
places
the bottom
to
line
hit?
for me is, though, that this is a very needed program that has worked well, and I think they have pushed it a little too far, and it may endanger the whole program.
I think the program continues to work well. And in terms of killing by proxy, killing from distance, we do that with smart bomb technology now, where you put in the location and the bomb finds where it needs to go. For me, the question is, what's the activity that's happening at that site? Do we know that, in fact, it's an al-Qaeda camp and it's not something else that's being mislabeled, and that American who's there is up
What
to no
did you
good?
think, and what would you like, I guess, that the role of Congress be in this?
I think if they have determined that an American citizen is involved, there should be something like the FISA court where they go, because it's not all of a sudden they said, oh my God, there's an American there, we got to get him. They have been tracking this person, and then I think they should have to go to a
Some kind of
FISA court,
fast-track thing
and
that
they
can
have
get
to
them.
present evidence that says this guy is a terrorist. That's what we do now to get information about potential terrorists in the United States.
But the Bush administration argued, and the Obama administration has continued through the Patriot Act and other legislation, avoiding those FISA courts and just simply making those decisions unilaterally. They say there's not enough time.
Wait a second. The United States, under Bush, established the FISA court, and you have to go through a process before you can take action.
You don't. For wiretapping, you don't have to go through the FISA court if they think there's an imminent threat. I think that was one of the provisions of the Patriot Act.
Well, define imminent threat. Imminent
Well, then
threat.
you get right back to where we started.
No,
you
I mean,
know?
that's an absurdity. I bet every time they have had to go to the FISA court. And I've been in the court. It's a closed room with no windows, and a judge is there, and the FBI and others, CIA agents, have to go swear under oath that, in fact, there is this person is what we think it is, and we need to go after him.
It's definitely not over. And it'll be interesting who's going to be most vocal, Tom, in terms of saying the president went too far. Because if you think about it, it's the civil liberties organizations that are probably the most tweaked right now, who are usually his allies.
Yeah,
and the conservatives.
But they don't go after him though on anything.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
today.
This is sort of
ACLU went nuts today
this
on
is
this
Clinton triangulation. The people who are most opposed to Obama agree most with him on this. So it'll be his own people who will have to go after him, and they never do.
Well, if today's a snapshot, the ACLU's gone, more than a little nuts.
Wait,
today. We'll see how it
I'm
goes.
waiting for the New York Times editorial
Just-
on this.
This is how we're going to conduct war for the next generation or 3. So this is something we need to get in focus.
We better have rules.
Yeah.
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 All right. We want you to keep this conversation going online. Go to Facebook as well as Twitter and sound off. Are you okay with drones targeting American citizens? We're going to take a quick break. That's a yes vote from Tom.
Abroad.
And then we turn abroad, okay, to the issue of guns. And we got a little bit of a breakout here, not only which members of Congress might be on the fence here by a recent accounting as to who could or couldn't go either way on this, but also who are gun owners and how much that may or may not drive their eventual vote. Stay with us, everyone. We'll be right back.